Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa is a bucket list resort stay here at the Walt Disney World Resort for so many, and who could blame them? It's a beautiful resort in a fantastic location, and I mean, it's iconic. So we were really excited to book a stay here and tell you about it, so that's what we're gonna do today. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Disney's Grand Floridian. It's checkout day, and that means it's time to do a review, and I have so much to share with you about this stay. Of course, before we get into it, I have to remind you that we're staying in a resort studio. This is a Disney Vacation Club room here at this resort. We also have a theme park view, so every night we can enjoy the fireworks as well as just a fantastic view out from our balcony, but we'll get more into that here in a bit. Of course, like with all of our reviews, we're talking a little bit about the Grand Floridian as a whole, as well as sharing what our thoughts are on the experience and giving you the best and worst of what this place has to offer. So let's start with some basics about Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa. Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa is located in the Magic Kingdom area, and when I say Magic Kingdom area, I mean it's right here at Magic Kingdom. We have access to the monorail right from the resort, which means we are incredibly close to Magic Kingdom. We can also use the monorail to get over to Epcot. Now, if that's something that you want to do, there is an extra step involved. You'll need to get on the monorail here at the Grand Floridian and then take that to the TTC where you transfer over to the Epcot monorail, and then from there you can make your way over to Epcot relatively easily. So it does take a little bit of extra time to get over to Epcot, certainly more time than it would be to get to Magic Kingdom, but it's still easy to access Epcot via the monorail, which is a great way of getting over there because the monorail's magical. We also have a walking path, which is incredibly convenient, especially on really busy days where you don't want to wait for the transportation options to get back to the resort. It is a bit of a walk, but it's relatively close and it's a really lovely walk. We take it all the time. The resort also has multiple dining options, including some more casual options like the Grand Floridian Cafe, where we ate the other day. They also have a quick service and a pool bar, but you'll also find some of the fanciest dining options located at the Walt Disney World Resort here at the Grand Floridian as well. This includes Victoria and Albert's as well as Narcoossee's. There's also character dining over at 1900 Park Fair, and there's a Beauty and the Beast themed lounge here too. So there are plenty of dining options available, though they're not necessarily going to be suited for everyone's budget. The Grand Floridian also has the spa, it's right in the name, and this is where you'll find the iconic wedding pavilion here at the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, of course, I did mention that we're staying in a Disney Vacation Club room, and that's because there are DVC rooms located here at this resort. So that means we have a wider variety of room types here, including Disney Vacation Club villas, which could accommodate larger families, and they also have things like kitchens and kitchenettes. This resort also has those standard resort rooms as well, with a variety of options to choose from. So lots of variety here at Disney's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa, as well as the villas. As always, it's important to keep in mind that if you're choosing a Disney Vacation Club villa, the rooms are going to be slightly different than what you would get if you were staying in a standard Grand Floridian resort room. This is a discussion we're going to really dig into here in the future. I don't really want to take up too much of today's review touching on this because it is such a big topic and one that I think is really important to keep in mind, especially if you're a Disney Vacation Club member thinking about staying in the villas here. But I do want to make note as we kind of get into this review that that's something you really want to be aware of if you're going to be staying at one of the villas or if you're staying as a Disney Vacation Club member at this resort. Depending on your wants and needs, you're going to really want to be paying attention to the room that you select. Speaking of room, I have done a full room tour of our resort studio, which I encourage you to go check out if you're interested in seeing the room that we're discussing today. But as a quick overview for those who haven't had a chance to check that out yet, this is a room that does have 2 beds as well as a pull-out couch, and that allows this room to sleep 5. Now, it does have many of the amenities that you would expect from a standard resort room. We have a table, you're actually hanging out on the table right now. We have a dresser, lots of storage options. We have a closet, bathroom is nice and a good size, but it is a little bit different from what you would probably come to expect from a Disney Vacation Club villa if you're thinking about staying in this room because you want that fireworks view, but you usually choose deluxe studios. Again, this gets gets into that conversation of room type that we're gonna really dig into a little bit more later, but I feel like it's such an important detail to make sure that we're mentioning today. But now that we've covered the basics, let's get into the review, talking a little bit about our experience and what we thought. Now, before I jump in, I do want to say it's me sitting here chatting with you today, but this review is actually a culmination of not only my opinions and experiences, but also Russ's. And we did have 2 family members joining us for this stay, and so they had a lot to say, and I have it all noted down so that I can share it with you as well. I mention this because some of you were wondering about this in a past review, so rest assured, it's not just my opinions here, though I'm the one who kind of pulls it all together and shares it with you, but I am sharing the opinion of everyone who was able to experience this room with us. So first and foremost, let's talk about the resort itself. This resort is in a fantastic location, and it's one of our favorite types of places to stay. Because we have such easy access to at least one park, it gives you that freedom to come and go as you please without having to wait for Disney transportation. And yes, Disney transportation is fantastic, but there's something about having that little bit of freedom to walk wherever it is that you want to go, and you definitely get that from this resort. Not only can we walk over to Magic Kingdom, but we also have the ability to walk over to other monorail resorts as well. The Contemporary, Polynesian, those are all easily accessible on foot. This opens us up to more dining, both table service and quick service, which is always a good thing, gives you some variety to enjoy during your stay, but it also opens us up to the offerings available at both, which is something that's really notable, especially if you're traveling during the holidays, because there are some fun things that happen at both resorts during the holidays that you're gonna wanna take advantage of. And you can do that easily if you want to go for a nice walk from this resort. But you also have very easy access on the monorail as well, which is fantastic. Now, as far as the resort, the way that the resort is laid out, it's similar to some other resorts that you'll find at Walt Disney World. It's a collection of buildings. Those are multi-story buildings. This means the resort is a little bit bigger than you would get if you were staying somewhere like at the Contemporary, where it's a tower. All of the rooms are up rather than out. But it's definitely not as sprawling as other resorts like Old Key West or Saratoga Springs, or even Caribbean Beach. This gives the Grand Floridian, at least in my opinion, a nice balance. No, it's not as convenient as tower hotels or resorts where you don't have to leave the building. You will need to do a little bit of walking, but it's certainly not as inconvenient as some of the more spread out resorts. And I do think that that adds something to this resort. It feels a little bit more casual because you can stroll back and forth, but it doesn't feel like a production like it would in some other places where you have to like gear up to get where you're going. Of course, this all depends on where your room is located, but for the most part, this resort isn't a huge property, and so it is somewhat easy to get around. Now, with the nature of this resort, like I mentioned, you're going to find yourself strolling around on pathways to get where you're going, and that actually leads me to one of the worst things about this resort, and that is the use of golf carts and utility vehicles by the staff. Now, don't get me wrong, staff members definitely need to get back and forth to wherever it is that they're going to do whatever it is that they need to do. But here at this resort, they do that with the use of golf carts as well as similar utility vehicles, and they ride those golf carts and other vehicles on the pathways. And I have to say, this not only kills the vibe of the resort for me, but quite frankly, I think that it's rather dangerous. These pathways are being used by families and children, and these cast members are driving these golf carts around much faster than they ought to be. Oftentimes, this left myself as well as my family members feeling pressured that we needed to get out of the way, which was difficult. As I mentioned to you, I have a family member that has some mobility issues. It's a little bit difficult to kind of dodge out of the way of these golf carts and other vehicles, and I just don't think that this is an acceptable way to move cast members to and fro around this resort. This is also something that happened throughout the day. It wasn't something that just happened during a very specific time, maybe one of those moments when we were at the resort but most people were at the parks. All hours of the day this was happening, and there were even some points in the day where they completely blocked the path. Some cast members just kind of huddled together, chatting over whatever it is that they were chatting about, and we had to kind of navigate through the vehicles in order to get where we were going. And I don't think that that's an acceptable way to do whatever it is that they're doing, especially at this level of resort. Of course, this is one of, if not the most expensive resort here on Walt Disney World property, and I think that it should be handled in such a way. And this just isn't it. Now, while we're on the topic of some of the worst things about this resort, I have to take a second and mention the parking situation. This isn't something that's going to impact everyone in the same way, but if you're like us and you do drive in and you're planning on staying at the Grand Floridian, this is something that you really want to be aware of. The parking situation here at the Grand Floridian is just not the best. In fact, it's probably one of the most inconvenient things about staying here. Not only is there such limited area for parking, but because the Grand Floridian is home to so many great table service options, and that does give you the ability to park temporarily at this resort, we see that there's just nowhere to park. And so sometimes guests like us are unable to find a place to park even though we're staying at the resort. This means parking way out of the way. For us, that meant parking over by the wedding pavilion, which was about a 10-minute walk from our room, never mind the fact that, you have luggage or whatever the case may be. Of course, you do have the option of driving up to the front and then dropping off your bags and then parking, returning back, so on and so forth. Like, there are ways to do this, especially if we're talking about checking in and checking out. But if you're thinking about taking your car around from this resort, you're going to be staying here, you want to drive to the theme parks or whatever the case, you might find that it's a bit of a production to get to and from your car each day, and you may not have access to parking when you return. This is something that we ran into during our stay, and though we were still able to find parking, I do think that it's worth mentioning for those of you who rely on taking your car, also for those of you who think that you might be able to park relatively close to your room. Unlike some other resorts that we've stayed at, the lots aren't necessarily close to each section of the resort, so you might want to prepare yourself for a walk. Other things that we really liked about this resort were the dining options that were available. There are a lot of them, not only at this resort, but also at neighboring resorts, which makes this a great option if you're someone who really likes to enjoy that table service dining and lounges during your vacations. Of course, you could say the same thing for quick service. Quick service here is pretty good. We do enjoy the quick service options at this resort. We also really like the quick service over at the Contemporary as well as the Polynesian. So if table service isn't in your budget and you still want variety, you still do have options available to you. There are also lounges at all of these resorts, so if you want to enjoy a nightcap, you have a place that you can do that, and you can change it up throughout your stay. That said, I think it's really worth noting that while you do have a wide variety of dining options here at this resort alone, they're not going to be for everyone. Again, we have some really high-end fine dining here. These are the type of places we're going to have to take things like dress code into consideration. So not the casual, let's see if they have a dining reservation walk-up type place to enjoy, though those places are available here. I do find they're a little bit overpriced. We did eat at the Grand Floridian Cafe the other day and we're kind of underwhelmed. Of course, if you want to hear more about that, go check out our review. But okay, now that we've covered the resort itself, let's talk a little bit about the room. As I mentioned, again, this is a resort studio with a theme park view, and I have to say, it's one of the most beautiful rooms that I've ever stayed at here at Walt Disney World. The second we stepped inside, we were just taken aback. The color, the patterns, the theme, everything about this room feels deluxe. Everything feels special. From the artwork to the attention to detail on the lampshade and the chandelier, the wallpaper, everything just makes it feel like this is a deluxe experience. And it makes it feel like the type of experience that many of us come to expect from Disney. And that was incredibly refreshing, especially for a Disney Vacation Club room. Oftentimes, Disney Vacation Club rooms are a bit more sterile. They don't have the same vibrancy and theme that you'll find at their deluxe counterparts, and that's not the case in this room. So that really was something that we felt was very special. That said, just because a room is beautiful doesn't mean that it's perfect, and this room has quite a few flaws. The biggest of which is just how loud this room is. So if you check out our room tour, you'll see that this room is a lock-off, which means it has a door that is shared between our room and the next. This is for families who need a little bit more room but still want to be connected. You can open up that door and kind of double the size of this room. That door has absolutely no sound deadening at all, meaning we could clearly hear everything that was going on in the room next to us. And while that's more of an issue of privacy most times of the day, it really became a problem as we got into those evening hours. I mean, for us, it was an issue just trying to get to sleep, because we really wanted to take advantage of early park entry the next day. And the family next to us, they weren't going to bed anytime soon. And I'm not talking about an early bedtime, I'm talking around like midnight. And it's not like they were being overly loud or obnoxious or partying or anything like that. They were just engaging in conversation, and we could clearly hear them as though they were in the room with us. So that was something that we really didn't like about this room. And I mean, that's just part of the noise. You can definitely hear, I don't even know, you might not be able to hear it, but you can definitely hear people running around upstairs, which again, it's mid-morning right now, so that's not really an issue, but it does become an issue in the evening, and that's something that we did encounter during our stay. In terms of privacy, I also think it's worth mentioning the balcony. Now again, this isn't something that's going to impact everyone in the same way, but the balcony doesn't have a solid divider. It's a rather small one with gaps kind of all the way around. So while you're not looking directly at your neighbors, you're definitely sharing a space. And I think that that's something that some of you might want to be aware of, especially if you really love taking advantage of your balcony. For us, it wasn't really a problem. We did have some sound issues out there, but I think that that would have been a problem either way. That said, I think it's worth noting. Now, everything else about the room itself we thought was pretty great. The one exception is the table that they do have in this room. It's kind of an end table. It's very heavy and it's a little bit big for this space. We did find that because of its position, it was a little hard to get out onto the balcony. Then we wanted to move it, but it is so heavy. So it didn't feel like it fit in this room, although it is a useful piece of furniture to have. So I'm not exactly sure how they would have done this better other than making it a little bit lighter. Beyond that, the room was spacious enough. I do think it would be a little bit tight for 5 people, but you know, if you stay organized, you don't really spend a ton of time in the room, this could probably work. We also had an ECV in this room with us, and we were able to tuck it away over by that lock-off door. It was able to stay out of the way, so it didn't really impede traffic in and out of the room, and I think that is worth noting, especially if you're someone who is going to need something like that during your stay. There were a few places that we felt like this room could be a bit better, mainly the cleanliness of the shower. While it was relatively clean, I just think that these rooms need a little bit more attention to detail when it comes to the shower heads. I understand that there's some hard water here. I do know that there's ways to remedy that. And quite frankly, the easiest way would be to clean the shower heads regularly. Of course, because this is a Disney Vacation Club room, they don't get cleaned every day. And I do think that that takes a little bit away from the room, especially in a room like this that is so beautiful. Everything looks so clean and so lovely. Then you go and step in the shower and it's just not. So that's something that I think is worth noting. I wish that that would be improved upon here at this resort. But there's one more thing that I want to mention about this room before we wrap this review up. And it does have it falling short for us, though not necessarily for the reasons that you might think. And I know this is going to be a little hard to articulate. It's been the subject of many discussions over the past few days as we've all been trying to organize our thoughts on this particular problem that we had with this room. It's actually why I want to have a discussion with you about this a little bit later when I can kind of organize my thoughts a little bit more. Still, I want to mention it today because I do think it's an important part of the review as a whole. This room, while it is a Disney Vacation Club room, is not a deluxe studio. It's a resort studio, and there's a difference. And if you watch our room tour, you might be able to spot some of those differences. I even pointed some of them out, mainly with the kitchenette area, which is something that is a really nice feature of deluxe studios, and it's one of the reasons that Disney Vacation Club members opt for these DVC villas. It's an accommodation that makes things a little bit easier, especially when you're looking for that home away from home. This room lacks a number of those things, and that is likely because it's a resort studio and not a deluxe studio. And there's a difference. There's a difference not only in name, but also in what you're getting. And that's not something that we were anticipating because we again make the connection between DVC and certain amenities. And this is something that truthfully we've never encountered before, with the exception of the cabins, which I think was a little bit of a different situation, but it is something that has me thinking that more research ought to be done into the room type that we book, especially if amenities are important to you, which in the case of this room, they were. There's a little bit of a backstory here, but this is actually a stay that our family booked, and they booked it for a very specific reason. They wanted to have access to things like a fridge, not a full-size fridge, but definitely something more than a beverage cooler. They wanted to have access to things like a toaster and a sink so that they can wash their dishes. That's not available in this room like it would be in a deluxe studio. And look, thus far, I haven't really had the time to dig more into this and see where we dropped the ball. You know, what did we miss when booking this room? That's something that I'm going to look more into once I wrap things up here and make my way home. But it is something that has me wanting to talk about this, even just briefly here today, and communicate with those of you who are considering booking these rooms that a little bit more research ought to be done when making the decision, especially if you're making the decision based on your fireworks view, which is the case for this room. We could have gotten just a standard deluxe studio, but we wanted that fireworks view, and that had us in a resort studio, but some sacrifices were made. So more about that a little bit later, but I do think, especially if you're a Disney Vacation Club member thinking about staying in one of these rooms because you like those DVC amenities, this is important to make note of. But other than that, this was a great stay. The room was absolutely gorgeous. The fireworks view is fantastic. We really loved that. Also, this is a great place to enjoy the electric water pageant, so it was an added bonus on top of being able to see the fireworks. The electric water pageant actually came right in front of our room, which was just super magical. And of course, the proximity to Magic Kingdom as well just made this perfect in our opinion. Although there are some areas where it fell short, the noise, for example, those are things that can easily be accommodated for with a white noise machine. Of course, you do have Hey Disney in this room, so you can use that to play soundscapes and just kind of make things a little bit easier to manage as well, which is what we did during our stay. But with that, I want to know what you guys think if you've ever stayed here. What were some of the best and worst parts of this resort in your opinion? Tell us all about it in a comment down below. Also, let us know if this is a bucket list resort for you and why. But for now, I'm off. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and hearing everything that I had to say about this resort. I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say as well, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, thanks for hanging out. Bye, guys.